It's Thursday, July 24th. I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast, and it is a hell of a day to talk ball. And joining me to do just that is Scott Pianowski. Scott, what's going on, buddy?
Yeah, Matt, it is a great time to talk ball because teams are assembling and doing things, and we're going to actually have some news and some activity to analyze. And a lot of what's been theoretical will actually become real and tangible awfully soon. And it's such a great year for Yahoo Fantasy. So many exciting things are coming, and I could not be more thrilled to be here on your show talking football.
Hell yeah, brother. It's our show, and I'm happy to have you here. Like Scott said, a lot of big things happening right now. Before we dive into today's topic, which is going to be the storylines to watch for training camp, which all 32 of them are opening up in full swing by the end of the week. We actually have a preseason game 1 week from today. But before we get into all that, big news to share. And again, like I said, I'm going to hit you guys over the head with this over and over and over again. But we have launched a new Yahoo Fantasy YouTube page to give you a one-stop shop for all your fantasy needs. And even bigger news, this show, this pod, will go live every Sunday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific on the Yahoo Fantasy YouTube page starting August 4th. That is rapidly approaching. And it's also an important date because once it is August 4th, all of our full episodes and all the content from this show is going to be on the new YouTube page, no longer on the Yahoo Sports main channel. You guys can stay over there, watch the great stuff that's going on, but let's come and migrate to the new channel. We have links to subscribe in the comments and in the captions of every show we are doing, and I will take personal offense, and Scott will take even bigger personal offense. You do not want to see Scott when he's angry if you do not subscribe to the channel. So like I said, I'm going to hit you over the head with this a lot. Folks watching and listening would love it if you would do that. So Scott, today we have 12 fantasy storylines / questions we want you all to pay attention to this training camp season. I'm going to let you go first. What is your very first storyline question that you want to be paying attention to this training camp season?
Yeah, this is the team I wish they were doing a documentary on because I would watch every episode. I can't wait to see the Jaguars open camp and Liam Coen. Is he another right answer? Is he? And he certainly was a right answer in Tampa Bay. But is he like a Sean McVay right answer? Is he an Andy Reid right answer? I realize it's a very high bar to clear. We want to see if Trevor Lawrence can become the superstar he was supposed to be when he came out of Clemson. We want to see what Travis Hunter is going to be his first season in the NFL. Brian Thomas obviously was terrific last year while everything around him was falling apart. And which running back do we want to draft, if any of these guys? We saw Coen made excellent use of his backs, especially in the passing game in Tampa Bay. So we have some exciting coordinator changes. This will not be the last one that we talk about. And of course, Coen has all the keys in Jacksonville, but he was acquired for his offensive acumen. Is he going to bring this offense up to code? Is Trevor Lawrence ready to be a star? I cannot wait to see what's going to be popping in Jacksonville.
There's so much intrigue around this team. I love the way that you phrase it. Like, I wish we could just have a 24/7 camera on what's going on in Jacksonville, like a real deal, not a Hard Knocks puff piece documentary, but like a real deal investigative report on what's going on. And look, there are great Jacksonville reporters. There are great Jaguars reporters down there. You know, I'm going to be dialed into everything John Shipley's telling us from the Jaguars training camp. But man, there's just so much to find out here because it's not just like, how is this offense going to come together? It's how many snaps is Travis, like, are we going to actually be able to learn like how many snaps Travis Hunter is playing on offense in training camp? Like, what this is an unprecedented situation, and it's not something that I think we have like a blueprint for, you know, in terms of how we can figure out how many snaps he's going to be playing on offense, because it might change on a week-to-week basis, Scott. Like, are there any clues you're looking for to kind of try to uncover this mystery? And as it stands right now, as it is a mystery, are you thinking that Travis Hunter will be a proactive draft pick for you in redraft leagues this year?
Yeah, you know, sadly, he probably won't be for me, only because I think he's going to have some role on defense. But, you know, I come from the fantasy baseball space, and we have a time now where Shohei Ohtani is a unicorn, right? I mean, he's the best offensive player in baseball, but he also pitches, and he pitches at, you know, kind of like a Cy Young level, but they have to monitor his innings. And it's a case of he's a monster on offense. He is also useful as a pitcher, but does that take away from his offense? A lot of the same questions are asked, right? Because people will say, well, if Travis Hunter's so good at receiver, why do you want to take him away? Why do you want to use up more of the toothpaste? Why do you want to risk more injury? Give him more to learn. So it's at a time when we have a unicorn in baseball, we have a unicorn in football, because we have nothing to compare this to. I mean, I know Roy Green, once upon a time, different generation, played defense. We remember Troy Brown when the Patriots would be shorthanded on defense. He would pick up some snaps in the secondary, and Deion Sanders would do some window dressing offense here and there. We see that every once in a while where a defensive player wants to play offense, or a team is in pass defense on a Hail Mary, they throw the receiver out there. It's kind of like a vanity thing. Hey, Keyshawn, go down there and intercept that pass, that type of thing. I think it's the way to keep players engaged sometimes more than anything else. But we have nothing to compare Travis Hunter to. And I'm here for it, man. I mean, football is about evolution. It's about new stories. It's about seeing something you haven't seen before. And we're going to see some form of that in Jacksonville. And that's why it's no fun to say that, to me. Here's the thing, okay? As great as Hunter was at Colorado, and he won all the awards, and deservedly so, Brian Thomas has already done it in the NFL. And that's, he's already taken a lap in the league and shown he can win at all levels. And he won with very bad quarterback play. Even when Mac Jones was under center, Brian Thomas was still just roasting people. It's crazy what he could have done with good quarterback play or good play calling last year, because the guy was always open. When we knew he could run by people, but I thought his routes were more sophisticated. You can speak to that better than I can, because you obviously chart all the receivers. But to me, Brian Thomas is the player I'm probably going to have the most of here. And I realize a lot of that is draft slot dependent, because there's certain slots that won't make sense. If you pick first in your draft, you wouldn't pick Brian Thomas then. He probably won't get to you when you pick again. So that's a lot of that is just the destiny of what you draw. All the more reason to play salary cap, by the way. You can shape your roster any way you want. But I think Thomas is... what he did last year can't be ignored, and I think that's going to somewhat mute what Hunter does in year one.
Yeah, and I think that can be good for Hunter's like long-term growth, right? Because he doesn't have to be counted on to be like the wide receiver one right away. I also think it's going to be really interesting, and this is something I'm curious to see from both of these receivers' usage in training camp, and obviously I doubt they're going to play a ton of preseason where they're really showing a lot of their hand here, because Coen comes off that Rams Sean McVay tree that just like kind of waves the preseason so I don't know that we'll see a lot of these guys in actual exhibition games, but really curious to see who's kind of the screen guy in this offense, right, Scott? Because Liam Coen's Buccaneers offense was one of, if not the most efficient offense when throwing screens last year, right? Like that was a huge part of what they were doing in Tampa Bay. It was a huge part of like Chris Godwin's role, like Bucky Irving's role, even that like period that I always come back to when they were just feeding the offense through Cade Otton. And I think that both, like, number one, Brian Thomas Jr., I've quoted this stat a lot. He averaged 10 yards per target on screens last year, which the fact that he can do that in addition to being a guy who beats press coverage in reception perception over 80% is just alarming. Like he can be so good. So he could do those screen works, but Travis Hunter like never went down on first contact as a wide receiver at Colorado. He was dynamic on screens himself. So I think the answer will probably be both, but I wonder if we get clues and could that be like, this guy's lining up in the slot more than this guy as to who's like the preferred screen guy between these two.
Right. And you mentioned, what Otton had his moments. So maybe Brenton Strange belongs on our sleeper page. Mm-hmm. And don't forget, before Godwin got hurt, I believe it was depending on your scoring system, he was a top 5 receiver. He was the highest wide receiver 2 before the injury. So Godwin was going to have a monster season. It's kind of scary that
he was wide receiver Godwin 2 behind only Jamar Chase. Like that's how good he was in the first 7 weeks. Right.
So again, man, Liam Coen is here and it's glorious. Brian Thomas is already great. Maybe Trevor Lawrence is going to be great. Maybe Travis Hunter will be great right out of the box. I know we've asked this on a previous show, but let's just hit it really quick before we get out of Jacksonville. Which running back are you pointing towards?
Look, right now, as we sit here today, I think I have Travis Etienne highest in my rankings just because I think he's going to get the first. I think it comes into camp as his job to lose because he's a former first-round pick. He's had like the most sustained success in the league, even if he's not come. Even though I think Tank Bigsby was better than him last year, I think it's a blank slate. Right now, I'd give him the edge, but Scott, I don't know about you. I could completely change that answer in a week, if not 2 weeks' time, with more evidence in training camp. How about you?
Well, I'll cheat a little bit. Etienne highest in my rankings, but I think Tootin will be the player I probably roster the most by the time draft season is over.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair because if it doesn't work out for Tootin, you can just easily move on from him in a redraft setting. I'll stick in the AFC South for my first question here. And at first, when I made my list of like 6 questions, because we're 12 storylines, we're going to do 6 and 6. I had this one as my last one, and then I bumped it up because I want to talk about Cam Ward and the Tennessee Titans and the fact that I will be monitoring Cam Ward's progress throughout training camp. You know, we're not going to get a ton of clues as to how good he can be as a rookie, but nevertheless, I do want to read these reports. And the reason I bumped this up, Scott, is because like nobody talks about the Titans, okay? Like I feel like Cam Ward, it's so stupid to say this because he was the first overall pick, but I feel like we're not talking about Cam Ward enough. And I honestly think that it's not super clean, but there's a lot of similarities to Cam Ward if he comes in and just is ready to rock and hit the ground running right away, that he can have a pretty similar effect to like what Jayden Daniels did for the Commanders last year. Nobody was thinking that the Commanders could be a great offense. They ended up being a top 5 offense by basically every metric last year. I think it would be a huge jump for the Titans to go from where they were last year to being in that range, but maybe Cam Ward can give us a Bud Light version of that. And if that's the case, like if he does that, neither Calvin Ridley nor Tony Pollard goes in the top 20 picks. People have kind of forgotten that Chig Okonkwo ended the season pretty well last year. And there's like some interesting depth wide receivers here. You know, they have Van Jefferson and Tyler Lockett on the roster, but they also added 3 rookies, Chimere Dike. They added Alec Iomanner. They added Xavier Restrepo, who Cam Ward played with. Like there is some intrigue in this offense in front of it, like a rebuilt offensive line. So I think there could be some sneaky fantasy value for this Tennessee Titans offense. Cause Scott, like I went back and charted Calvin Ridley for reception perception. I think he was really good last year in isolation, and he was productive too. Like he had 1,000 yards in that terrible offense. Why can't he take a step forward and beat these projections that we're showing here of 928 yards when he quite literally did it last year with horrible quarterback play? So it's a lot to rely on a rookie to do all of these things. And I'm not saying that I'm going to project and rank it that way, but I do think it's within the range of outcomes. And I don't think that is being given enough credit here when we're talking about the Titans right now.
Yeah, great call out to Tennessee in the Ward situation. And for everybody who says fairly so, well, why do you compare him to Jayden Daniels? That's like a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Well, the previous season, C.J. Stroud broke all expectations in Houston and was much better than advertised ahead of schedule. Now, everything went wrong for Houston the following year, although they still made the playoffs. You're going to take your opponents to Value Town with the Titans if Ward is competent, because Ridley set up to be a screaming value. Tony Pollard set up to be a screaming value. I love what you said about Chig Okonkwo, especially if you're in any kind of league that has some kind of tight end premium or tight end incentives. Okonkwo's always been a downfield guy I've been interested in. And last year, maybe you had the schemes, but not the players to execute the stuff they wanted to do most of the time because the quarterback play wasn't there. We all thought Ward was going to be the day one starter, but now that Levis is out for the year, that just kind of makes it all the more obvious that he's going to be playing. And you're right, it is a little bit of there are years where the number 1 pick has a little bit more buzz. I think maybe because of Hunter being that unicorn player and the big trade that Jacksonville and Cleveland put together to get Hunter into Jaguar uniform, maybe that's offset a little bit. No, it's just Tennessee. It's they've had success as a franchise, but it's not the Packers. It's not the Cowboys. It's not the Patriots. It's not the Jets. So maybe the Steelers. One of these legacy franchises. So I get sometimes that they get the second part of the page, or they go under the fold, as you would say in newspaper terms. But I think Ward's going to be competent right away. I think this is going to be an offense, a bunch of ADP beaters, right? And let me make something very clear here, because you're going to hear a lot of this all summer. You got to win your league. This guy's a league winner, and this guy's a league winner. And okay, fine. There's a couple of guys who might be league winners, and it's really hard to identify who they are. The way you win fantasy leagues is you make better decisions than your opponents. You make plus decisions. You make plus EV moves. And a plus EV move is drafting Calvin Ridley where they're allowing you right now in Yahoo leagues. A plus EV move is getting Tony Pollard on your roster, Cam Ward in a super flex format, stuff like that. There's all sorts of profitable plays here, and not every play has to be a home run. You get on base, you get a walk, a single, double. Those are all good things. Didn't everybody watch Moneyball, right? The whole key is getting on base, not necessarily about hitting a home run. You're going to have ADP wins in Tennessee. I want you to get some of these guys.
Yeah, and look, like Cam Ward might not be good as a rookie. I think that's obviously possible. Like rookie quarterbacks generally aren't good, but I think the situation here that he's walking into is a little bit underrated. Not only did I think Ridley was good last year, like way better in isolation than given credit for. I actually think the Brian Callahan offense, we just didn't get to see a lot of it because it was just manned by poor quarterback play. But actually the design of it was pretty good. And what they did to make the offensive line, you know, maybe it's only an average offensive line. That's way better than having a rookie quarterback behind a bad offensive line. That's pretty critical. So Calvin Ridley, wide receiver 35 right now in consensus ADP. I think he's going to outproduce a lot of guys that are going ahead of him. And he's like a pretty good arbitrage play on somebody, you know, like a Garrett Wilson who's going wide receiver 50. And I love Garrett Wilson, but he's, you know, it's questionable quarterback play. He might be the only guy in town. It's very similar. And again, there's 20 spots in receiver ADP between the two of them. So I'm glad we kind of see that one the same way. Let's move to your next storyline here, Scott, which this is a topic you and I have discussed and Boone and I have discussed, but it's about the Detroit Lions here.
Yeah, 20 minutes from my house, and it's been a fun team, right? I mean, they won 15 games last year, and they probably should have gotten the Super Bowl the year before for playing half from hell against the 49ers in the NFC Championship game. And what happens when you're good, you get rated. So you lose Ben Johnson, you lose Aaron Glenn, Frank Ragnow, their excellent center, has retired. So it's a transition year. I want to see how Johnny Morton looks with the play sheet. I want to see, is this the Jameson Williams step-up year, or is he kind of settling into where he is? Jahmyr Gibbs spread his wings last year when David Montgomery got hurt. Now Montgomery's back. What kind of roles are that going to shake out? I mean, Detroit at peak, we always said, okay, best offensive line in football, top 5 offense, indoor schedule. A very difficult schedule for the Lions this year, by the way. But what can they do? How much did this offense revolve around the Johnson schemes, and how much of this line was about Ragnow just having that thumb at the middle of your, the thumb isn't the middle of your hand, but the center is like kind of like the thumb of the offensive line. It's just, you do not want your center to ever to get hurt, or in this case retire, although good for Frank, and best of luck in future endeavors. Get out while you can still have your health and a quality of life. But it's a transition year for the Lions, and also the schedule, the division. The Packers are really good. The Vikings are really good. The Bears are, once again, talking themselves up. They always win the offseason. They don't seem to win the regular season all that much, but they've added Ben Johnson, and they gave Caleb Williams everything he wanted for Christmas. So it's a transition year, and I'm dying to get any kind of snippets I can. And our own Jory Epstein, our excellent Yahoo NFL reporter, was in Detroit this week and filed an article you'll want to read, just giving us a lot of tidbits about, we're trying to figure out, who is Johnny Morton? I mean, we knew him as a player, but who is he as a coach? Who is he as a play designer? And always remember this too, when you have and I say this a lot, I've probably said it on the show before, when you have a veteran quarterback, he's quasi-offensive coordinator too. I mean, Jared Goff remembers the throws. He likes the looks. He likes the formations. He'll have input in this offense, but I'm dying to see, and a little bit nervous. This is an anxious one. Some of them are more fun than others. With Jacksonville, we want things to get better. With Detroit, we're hoping things stay the same, right? We don't want things to get that much worse, but we have to give a close eye to what's going on in Detroit, because a lot has changed.
I agree with everything you said there about this being so important to watch. I also hated that, one of the first things that Dan Campbell tells the media in training camp as it opens up is, oh yeah, Levi Onwuzurike is out for the season, which, it's like a defensive tackle for them. Obviously it doesn't matter for fantasy, but this is a team that was just so snake bitten by injuries last season. And then immediately, like, especially first thing, oh, this guy that we brought back, he's just out for the year. Like that, obviously vibes aren't everything, but just a bad vibe to start off camp with. I think that the player that I'm watching is obviously Tate Ratledge, the rookie center, who is a guard to center convert, by the way, stepping into such big shoes with Ragnow. But Scott, what are you specifically looking to see from Lions camp to sort of get any clues about, hey, whether this offense is going to take a step back, or who Johnny Morton is as a play caller? Because I do think that's going to be tough to decipher, obviously, just from camp reports.
Right. And look, part of the whole problem, and you mentioned it earlier, but you didn't think Coen would reveal a lot in the preseason, is that's the trend of the NFL, is most teams are taking these preseason games as, let's fill out the back of our roster, let's make depth choices, but we're not going to expose our primary players, and we're not going to expose our play tendencies and stuff. You just don't learn a lot. And also we see, and you have to accept this as a fantasy manager, that week 1 a lot of times is a glorified preseason week. Even week 2 has a little bit of preseason vibes because the teams haven't had that many game reps. And so they're just kind of kicking off some of the rust. And so it's, be patient with some of your guys. Don't be surprised if you have, because the Bengals, of course, symbolize this more than anything. Never picks the Bengals in week 1 of a survivor pool. We learned that last year when the Patriots, who had nothing at all going on. New England was 4-13 last year. Now they're expected to be a winning team. They're favored in 11 games. Man, has things changed there. We'll get to them in a second. But so a lot of it's reading between the lines, right? And also, just remember my fundamental rule of summer quotes. Believe part of the favorable things they tell you and believe every negative thing they tell you.
Yeah. And they're already, doing a lot of positive stuff with Jameson Williams. I think they might just do that forever, because I think he's a player that needs like that kind of encouragement and stuff. So I don't know that that's like a signal there, but obviously he's a player that is going to be important to track throughout the course of his career, really. But yeah, I think that I love your point about the early part of the season. Like, honestly, dude, I feel like September sometimes is just a glorified preseason for some of these teams.
Could be.
And you kind of and that's just the way it is, man. It's tough. Like that's what you sign up for with fantasy football, is that you need to, and you are the guy who really changed my way of thinking on this, that like winning September is critical, and like it just makes your life easier. Like, oh yeah, the final push to the playoffs, the weeks that really matter. Well, it's a little bit easier for those weeks that really matter when you come into it, as the number 1 seed and you have the easier path. It's true in football. It's true in fantasy. You're the one who really changed my opinion on that. But some of these teams, like, it's tough to win September because, hey, the Lions might end up being a good team and a good offense, but it might take a minute for them to get there with the new play caller and some of these changes. So they're obviously a super important team to track. I'll stick in the NFC North for my next one. I didn't mean for us to match divisions here, but we're going to do it again. My eye is obviously on Chicago for a lot of reasons. But I want to specifically talk about the 2 rookies that they added this year, Luther Burden, Colston Loveland. I want to track their involvement in camp because, number one, we actually have not seen much of these guys in the offseason. Loveland is still recovering from a shoulder injury that he had in college, played through, and that was part of it. Everybody knew that. That wasn't a surprise, but Luther Burden got hurt basically like right away in their rookie mini camp, had a soft tissue injury and hasn't been on the field since. Ben Johnson said, he's obviously behind. These are valuable reps that he's missed. That doesn't cause me to freak out about Burden, but I do think it sucks when rookies miss, and rookie wide receivers miss any time in their offseason. Now, if he's healthy and ready to go for camp, I'm kind of willing to just forget about that because I think he can pick it up. But the other thing that's important to track here, Scott, is if Colston Loveland comes in and he's healthy and he's ready to rock, I think this team's going to be very 12 personnel heavy, 2 tight ends on the field. And then there's not really a room for a third receiver. There's probably not room for a Luther Burden in that equation. But what if Burden is so good that he demands playing time? Like, I think that it's just very interesting to kind of consider these pass catchers and how they all might coexist, because it's just not really possible for them to have DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Cole Kmet, Colston Loveland, and Luther Burden all being on the field. Somebody has to lose out here. And I do think the training camp can give us some clues, whether it's the rookie tight end or the rookie wide receiver that starts a little bit slow. I still like taking both guys in drafts because they're going to be so cheap. They're going to have low ADPs, but those clues are going to be important to track here.
Right. Yeah. These are the Chicago Bears in 2025. They have too many good players. Right. The last time we said that, but yeah, they can't all play on the same formation unless they go empty. Johnson isn't going to do that very often. Of course, they don't want to leave Caleb Williams isolated. We saw that last year, 68 sacks. A lot of those were on Williams. They've upgraded the offensive line, and Loveland. Realize a different type of player frame, but we talked about the rookie quarterbacks hitting the ground running. For years, we talked about rookie tight ends were just a waste of time and don't even bother. And you'll see them in year 2, year 3, year 4. And then Laporta blows everything up 2 years ago under the tutelage of Ben Johnson. And then last year, obviously, Brock Bowers, despite the Raiders being kind of a dumpster fire, Brock Bowers was fantastic. So maybe that opens up just possibilities. Nobody's expecting a Laporta or a Bowers season from Loveland right out of the box, especially on this team that has so much wide receiver talent to begin with. But at least we have to be a little bit more open-minded about what tight ends can do as rookies, because we've seen the rules get bent, if not broken, the last couple of years. And Yeah, Chicago, there's a squeeze for playing time. A big part of it is just being healthy and getting those reps in, getting your feet wet your first time around the NFL and understanding the responsibilities of how the game is different at the pro level. And, tight end is, it's a blocking position. It's a route position. They're inline tight ends. Sometimes they get treated as jumbo receivers. There's a lot going on there. And I'm also curious to see if Kmet can hold on to any value. I've always liked him as a player. Yeah. He's never going to be a superstar. Nobody's ever going to compare him to the Gronkowski, Kelsey, George Kittle, this golden age of tight ends that we've had. But he's a good player, and I think he's going to have some role in the Ben Johnson offense. All the more reason why the 12 personnel makes a lot of sense as being a staple of their offense. But if somebody's going to get squeezed here, I want to see what happens. And also, you didn't mention it explicitly, but Adunze, Williams kind of overshadowed this team last year because, you draft a quarterback number 1 overall. That's going to be the story. He obviously never felt that comfortable in the Waldron offense. Waldron gets fired in season. The offensive line is bad. Williams didn't have pocket awareness. But Adunze was a disappointment last year. I think a lot of people are drafting him proactively and expecting a big step up from him. Again, a lot of times this stuff is between the lines where you read into it and maybe you see things that aren't there. Maybe you see things that are there. But I'm curious just to see how he's looking in year 2 because I feel like there's a lot of room for growth for a player we all liked, the number 9 overall pick in the previous draft, who almost had like a redshirt season.
Yeah, no question. A lot of room for growth there. And I think he's obviously, is his role going to be, and he was on the show and kind of talking about this recently, like, is his role mostly going to be that X receiver position? Because then he's going to be on the field a ton. And then it kind of comes down to, like, is it DJ Moore and Luther Burden that sort of eat into each other? Or is that not the role that Adunze is playing? Is he somebody that is going to move around the formation more? Like, these are all pretty critical things to track with this Ben Johnson offense, because I'm bullish on Ben Johnson. I think he's going to be really good for a lot of these players, but I want to sort of use these next few weeks to try to figure out who's going to be the beneficiary there beyond just the overall ecosystem being better in time. And that's another thing too. Like, this Bears offense might be good, but it might not be in September, right? Like we were talking about, it might be a slow start to the season because there's a lot of new things happening here. We are going to take our first break. When we come back, we have more training camp storylines to watch. All that coming up right after this. All right, Scott, we are back. We are continuing to roll through training camp storylines, questions that we are monitoring here over the next few weeks. You've got your next one about a team that I really struggle to figure out this year, so let's let it rip.
Yeah, and something right now I'm not drafting proactively, but I'm willing to change my mind if I can see some positive indicators. Can Miami get the deep ball back? This is a stat I can't unsee, Matt. There was a long completion to Tyreek Hill in week 1 last year. After that, he didn't have a 30-yard completion the rest of the season. And this is Tyreek Hill, walk-in Hall of Famer, right? I mean, maybe the best deep threat in the NFL is somebody who was in contention for Offensive Player of the Year 2 years ago. And we know why that happened. I mean, Tua Tagovailoa gets hurt. He's had concussion problems. The offense comes back. The focus becomes getting the ball out of his hands, no deep drops. And it's not just that Hill, you want to make the splash plays, right? You want to get behind the defense and stretch the defense out and hit home runs. It's not just that, but you want to keep Tyreek Hill engaged, right? You need to keep him fed, need to keep him happy. You want him on the reservation, right? The last thing Miami wants is like a 2-5 start, and Tyreek Hill's like, get me out of town, and they have to blow the whole thing up. And Mike McDaniel has gone from one of the ascending offensive minds in the NFL that he might be coaching for his job, and maybe this will be finally the year where we get kind of a verdict on Tua. So we know there's talent here. We saw last year Jonnu Smith became the featured player in the offense. He's since departed, but he has a breakout year out of nowhere, and that fit the offense, right? Let's get the ball out of our quarterback's hands. Let's get it into the seams. Let's try to get some yak. A lot of that fit into what Jonnu Smith does well. He's now reunited with Arthur Smith. You guys will have lots to talk about. And man, just when Jonnu Smith gets a break and has a monster season, he has to go back with Arthur Smith. I realize he got paid and he's happy and all that, but yeah, it just doesn't seem right. It just, the Miami thing was working out so well and now it's over with. But can we draft Tyreek Hill with confidence? Can we trust Mike McDaniel with confidence? It was just a couple of years ago, people were trying to make historical comps with this offense. Now it's like, can I just draft these guys and not, have sleepless nights? Can I not have the agita, the fluttering in my stomach like it's the first day of high school? It's crazy. This is why the NFL, I always talk about being a snow globe league, because the moment you think you know something, they shake the snow globe and everything changes. And it wasn't that long ago. This was like the most fun offense in the league, or one of them. And now I don't know if I can trust it.
I love that you threw this out here because, again, like I said, I can't quite figure this offense out. And I feel like whenever I'm on the clock, I just have been passing on Miami Dolphins players. And maybe that's a personal bias because I think the offensive line isn't good enough. I think the scheme has been figured out a little bit, and Mike McDaniel has not shown the ability to adjust to that. Not to mention that, like, I think Tyreek Hill played poorly in isolation last year. And again, I'm gonna go, like, his reception perception results. It's not on the site yet. It will be on the site soon. But that was a pretty significant drop off from, like, not just some of his best seasons, his most recent Miami seasons, to what he was last year. And typically, I have learned to just not bet on, like, bounce backs for older receivers. Like, you can have a guy have a dip season and then come back if it's, like, in the middle of their prime. I mean, again, I'm going to quote you here, Scott. Like, when the cheese goes bad, it doesn't get unbad. And usually that is what happens here with these, again, aging players, especially a guy that's just got a lot of stuff, going on. And, like, a guy that you said they start 2-5, you might want off the team. He wanted off the team at the end of last season and then kind of walked that back, And the Jonnu Smith part of it all is really interesting because when Jonnu Smith was traded, it felt like the entire fantasy industry reacted with, wheels up for Devon Achane on kind of schemed up targets, wheels up for Tyreek Hill again as a bounce back. Maybe Jalen Waddle can even get going again. And I actually think that Waddle can get going again, but I made this point a lot last season, Scott. The best stuff in Miami's passing game was the Jonnu Smith plays. Like, he led the team, 64% success rate when he was targeted last year. That was 10% higher than Jalen Waddle at number 2. EPA per target, 0.51, which was the highest on the team among any of these other guys. Like, those were really good plays. And now that dimension is gone. I think that might, like, I mean, again, maybe we just distribute it back to the wide receivers who they paid a lot of money to, or, then Devon Achane gets some of these really interesting receiving work that he did last year. But I don't know. That was a pretty big part of their offense last year, as kind of a layup for Tua, and now it's just gone.
Is there, of the big three guys, right, of Hill, Waddle, and Achane, can you see any of them being even like a quasi proactive pick for you?
I think that I'm fine. What do you think of Achane? Like, I don't know. I don't know why I can't, like, quite warm up to him at running back 7 and, like, a clear, kind of early second round pick. But it feels like the whole industry is totally behind Achane there. So I'm trying to, like, and I don't know if this is right. Maybe my first instinct to just be like, I don't really want too much of this Miami offense, and maybe he's going to scam his way to a bunch of receiving production. But I typically want more from that out of a first round running back, but maybe I'm wrong there. And from the receiver standpoint, I definitely am not drafting Hill where he's going. And I've just been more, if I'm going to take a Miami receiver, it will be Waddle. And I'll actually have those guys pretty closely ranked because I think the gap between them as players has closed at this point. Maybe the organization doesn't see it that way. That's just my personal opinion. So my answer to your question is not really at this point, but I'm trying to talk myself into it. So could you talk me into it, or am I right to kind of be avoiding this?
No, I think we probably line up pretty close here. If I'm going to shrug and take an ADP value, Waddle would be that guy. The thing with Achane is that I'm so driven to be volume heavy with my running backs, and I want easy touchdowns. I want, when my team just scored a touchdown from the 1 or 2 yard line, I want a path to that touchdown. And Achane is a low volume guy who hits home runs, and it's just generally not the way I invest in my backfields. I mean, look, we like 78-yard touchdowns. It's just a hard way to live, right? I mean, one of the fantasy questions of the year is, can Saquon Barkley average 29.4 yards per touchdown again and have a monster season without ever scoring from the 1 yard line? What an outlier year that was. It's crazy, man. All these statistical anomalies. But, Achane is somebody who every game they go in thinking the gas tank is half full. You can never go full tank with Achane. They understand that. Although every once in a while they'll get in a game that's not competitive in the fourth quarter and they keep feeding Achane. I'm like thinking, what are you doing? This is not the time to use him. Save this for a rainy day when you're going to need him. But it's just not the way I build my backfields, is on a guy who is a limited touches home run threat.
Yeah, I'm not going to rank him as somebody to avoid, but I just think that when I get on the clock in the second round, I probably prefer the receivers there, honestly. Like, there's so many good receivers going in the second round this year, whether it's Nico Collins, Brian Thomas Jr., like AJ Brown, even Drake London. Like, I probably prefer the receivers there, but that just might be the way I go about it this year. So,
but even if you went running backs, Even you went running back though, I'd be fine with a Kyren Williams, right? Or somebody like that. Or if Josh Jacobs got to the second round, or Jonathan Taylor got to the second round, these would be guys I'd be taking over Achane too.
Let's go to a running back here that I know I'm going to be drafting a decent bit of, or I'm going to try to, because I think the ADP is going to be rising and rising and rising. I'm going to have my eye on Omarion Hampton's rise over the course of Chargers training camp. Everybody knows by now Najee Harris is on the not football injury list. He's not because of the fireworks incident on 4th of July. So they signed Nyheim Hines, who hasn't played football in 2 years. I don't know if that's like a good signal or a bad signal about where Najee Harris is. The whole thing is just a little bit mysterious with the Najee Harris thing. So obviously that's worth keeping your sights on right now. With Hampton, like, I just think at this point, he is a guy who's going to rocket up fantasy rankings. And I think he, like right now, just looking at him on paper, really good prospect, an offense that I expect to score a good bit of points. They were 10th in points per game last year. And just a very explosive player that can catch passes as well. He looks more like a 3rd round pick to me in fantasy. And he's right now, the ADP isn't there, of course, because we're still catching up with all this news. But Scott, like, again, if right now, like I was drafting a team, I would have no hesitation clicking him in that 3rd round range. And I think there's a ceiling for even more there. So what do you think of Hampton? How high do you think he can rise? And will you be willing to kind of buy that rise throughout the course of the summer?
Yeah, Hampton to the moon, right? I mean, his ADP is as this news gets a little bit more crystallized and the ADP starts to reflect it. I mean, he's going to jump a round or two in ADP. I think a lot of people saw his ceiling is higher than Harris to begin with, and now Harris is limited, and they're adding Hines to the roster, which tells you that Harris isn't ready to go. And we know what do the Chargers want to do, right? I mean, they want to run, they want to physically impose their will. We saw them do that last year. Although I do want to also mention. So I'm in on Hampton, and we're totally co-signing that. We're both recommending Trident. Let's not lose the fact of what Ladd McConkey did last year, man. I love pulling out this over the last 7 games. Over the last 7 games of the regular season, 46, 657, 3, which in a full season would be 109 catches, 1,600 yards, and then he goes 9 for 197 and 1 in the playoff loss to Houston. So Ladd McConkey, it's amazing that the Georgia team didn't have to throw the ball that much on a roster that had Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey on it, 2 guys who just win constantly at all levels. And then now, of course, McConkey's on a similar team in the NFL because we know the Chargers, their identity we talked about. But I'm drafting Ladd McConkey super proactive, and I'm drafting Hampton proactively. I wouldn't even mind if I had them on the same roster. I realize they can't score in concert, but that doesn't matter. I'm going to try to be overweight on both guys.
An offense with Justin Herbert can be good enough to support a wide receiver 1 and a running back 1. And I think, again, neither one of those guys looks like a bad pick where they're going right now. I will obviously always co-sign any Ladd McConkey love you want to throw out there. And he's somebody that, with just the rest of the wide receiver and pass catching core, I think if Trey Harris is, look, that's an if. I think if Trey Harris is good enough to roll and play a big role as a rookie, then this is a good enough room. But it's still at a point where Ladd McConkey is going to dominate the targets, and he should. He earns them. He's good enough there. Let's go to your next storyline, Scott, which is obviously a team that is close to your heart.
Close to my heart. Yeah, I live in Michigan and I've adopted the Detroit teams, but I am from New England, and don't hold it against me. I'm a Patriots fan. Wasn't much of a season last year, 4-13, as I mentioned, but the only thing people really only cared about 2 things with the Patriots last year. Does Drake May look like a future, right answer? Yes. And the coaching staff probably overmatched. Can we maybe get those guys? Gerard Mayo is a great guy, just shouldn't be a head coach. Okay. Well, they got Mayo out. They got Mike Vrabel in, who was a home run hire, and not just Vrabel, but they did one of my favorite things. I love taking coordinators who fail as head coaches and rehiring them as coordinators. Cliff Kingsbury, right, did some really great things last year with Washington. We didn't really like him as a head coach, but we like him as a coordinator. Josh McDaniels is one of those guys. So I am another team I would love to have all access to because they've improved. Maybe he didn't get the Caleb Williams Christmas present in New England, but he got McDaniels. We'll see what Diggs is ready to do. See if he's ready to go week 1, which isn't a sure thing yet. Kyle Williams, have the Patriots finally drafted a receiver who can be impactful. Last year, they had 2 total misses in their receiver draft. I think Williams is going to be somebody they like, though. So I want to see how they've improved the offensive line. Obviously, they took the tackle 4th overall. That's short arms be darned. But New England favored in 11 of their games. After a year, they went 4-13. They've fixed the coaching staff, I think. They've given a lot more pieces to the quarterback to Drake Maye. But who is going to be his guy? What's left in the Diggs tank? Is Williams ready to make an impact year one? Can Hunter Henry be inside that tight end 12 bucket, where somebody we can start week in and week out? And do the Patriots deserve to be a quasi playoff contender? Because they're being treated like that in the over-under market. I think defense is going to be good. Not worried about that. Mm-hmm. But how much improvement can they make? How much have they fixed the offense? Does McDaniel still have the magic pixie dust that he had previously? I don't think he ever sold his house in New England, so it's almost like he knew he was coming back. It's just so nice. So many things. The Patriots have done so many things wrong with the whole Brady leaves and the whole Bob Kraft and Belichick thing is just an ongoing mess and everything. From the drafting of Maye, the hiring of Vrabel, the adding again to McDaniels, it seems like everything they're doing now, I'm like, yeah, I'm in on that. So it's just nice to feel good about your football team again. And man, I'm super excited about Drake Maye. And also he ran some last year. I don't know if that will stay, if that'll be sticky for him year over year, but he always was a good athlete at North Carolina, good bloodlines there. His brother was a North Carolina basketball star. So Drake Maye is just somebody who I want to bet on him for the next 10 years.
Well, I think the rushing can be sticky because last year it was quite literally almost all scramble yards. He only had like 1 or 2 designed runs. So, and he was second behind Jayden Daniels in scramble yardage last year, and he didn't even start the full season. So, and maybe again, if the offense is a little bit healthier, maybe he's not taken off and running in that way. But I do think there will be some rushing element to his game consistently throughout the course of his career. As I said on the show with Josh Norris a couple weeks ago, when we were talking about the second year quarterbacks, I'm still more concerned about the offensive line than the pass catchers because, like, I think this pass catching group, and especially when we're factoring in Travion Henderson as a receiving back, I think it's good enough for Drake Maye to have a second year leap, Scott. I could not, like, hand up, I could not have been more wrong about the Patriots receiver draft picks last year. I thought that Polk was, and look, I do think he was set up to fail with the role they had him playing in as a vertical X receiver, but still, he also dropped all of his opportunities. He couldn't catch the whole deal. Like, that looks like a miss. Javon Baker might not even make the roster this year. That obviously looks like a miss. So I got those guys wrong, but I'm willing to go back to the well for Kyle Williams this year, who there's some rumblings that he could play the X receiver position because he's so good against press. And then coming back to Stephon Diggs, like, man, it sounds like, Diggs is not starting camp on the PUP. Like, it sounds like he's made an awesome recovery from a torn ACL. Obviously, like, we got to see it in the games to believe it, but I think the vibe is certainly better than it could have been. And if Diggs is healthy and ready to rock throughout the course of the season, at wide receiver 42, like barely a top 90 pick, he's somebody I'm definitely willing to click, Scott, because it's a risk, but I think the risk is baked in there at that point. And the upside that he's not peak Diggs, he'll never be peak Diggs again, but he was still playing pretty well last year in isolation. I think that's encouraging for what he can do for New England.
Totally agree. Yeah, I think people lose that. Much like Godwin, Diggs was off to a really good start, not to the same extent as Godwin, and then it all comes tumbling down with the injury. I just want to say again how much I love Vrabel, man. His Tennessee team's always overachieved. And he says all the right things at the press conference. When people were giving the Patriots all credit for all these offseason moves, he's like, big deal, we won the offseason. That means nothing. He's the vibe, whatever Mike Vrabel is selling, man, I am buying it. I am first in line to buy it. I could not be more excited about the guy they hired. I realized they had made a promise to Mayo. That's why they hired him in the first place, but they should have hired Vrabel a year ago. At least they got it right. Again, no disrespect to Mayo. There's a bunch of things that Mayo will be really good at. He just shouldn't have been a head coach, but Mike Vrabel is, I think, one of the 5 best coaches in the NFL.
All right, my next one here, and I'm super curious to hear what you think about this guy because you mentioned him earlier in somewhat of a positive light. Kyren Williams versus the younger running backs in Rams camp. It was just about 365 days ago that the whole fantasy community was freaking out about Kyren Williams potentially being a punt returner. And oh man, Blake Corum's going to eat into his workload. And guess what? None of that was real. None of that was signal. And Kyren Williams ended up having a very, very good fantasy season. But the Rams were not a very efficient run game. They were not an explosive run game. Williams had some issues holding onto the football, and I think the lack of explosiveness might just be part of his game. So it feels like the fantasy community is once again talking about, hey, Jarquez Hunter now playing the role of Blake Corum, like a young running back who's going to take some work from Kyren Williams. I think that Hunter is a good sleeper and is an explosive guy who could be a nice complement to Kyren Williams. But Scott, I am certainly looking for some clues as to whether any of that is real or if it's just going to be the Kyren Williams show again, because certainly like if it's the Kyren Williams show again, his ADP, which is, some depending on where you're drafting, it's a second round pick. It's a running back one, maybe even a third round pick if other people are shy on Williams, and he could be a pretty big win there. But I do think that we are going to need some clues, like what if he gets a contract extension? What if there's no buzz about Corum or Hunter? So I think we kind of need to see some of those clues for me to totally buy in, but I'm not all the way out on Williams where he's going. How have you been viewing the situation, and what are you looking to see?
Yeah, well said. Is it interesting too that Hunter and Williams have almost the exact same measurables, right? They're about the same size. They're about the same weight. And if you're drafting Williams, you need the volume. Last year, the efficiency goes way down. The yards per carry goes way down. But because Williams was such a red zone factor, and again, whenever the Rams scored a 1 or 2 yard touchdown, it was Williams. I also want to see if they can get something going for Puka Nacua in the red zone, because they could not figure that out last year. Yeah. And he's a tricky player for me. They brought over Devontae Adams, who was put on this earth to score touchdowns. So how many touchdowns can you reasonably project Puka for? 6, 7, 8? I could never get to double digits and feel confident about it. But if you draft Williams in the second round, which is probably where he's landing in most Yahoo drafts right now, you need to tell yourself a story that he's going to score 10 touchdowns at least. He's going to catch 40 passes. He's going to be on the field 80% of the time, 75% of the time, something like that. The Corum thing didn't happen. But it's okay, maybe they just missed on Corum. Corum came into the NFL in an advanced stage, and maybe he was just more insulated by that system at Michigan. Hunter obviously played big-time football at Auburn. Maybe he's more prepared for the NFL. Maybe he's somebody who can more – McVay has generally been a one-back guy. But the best coaches, they really go talent to scheme, not scheme to talent. I don't think Sean McVay's like, I have to have one running back. If Sean McVay had 2 talented running backs, he'd use 2 talented running backs. So to me, it's more – maybe I'm looking for signs that Hunter's ready to ascend more than how do they feel about Williams. I think it's going to be how quickly Hunter picks up things, or he seems worthy of a role, which is going to determine just how much we see of him in his first season, especially in the early games. So I'm going to keep my ears peeled to how Hunter's adjusting. And also I want to see how their pass room is adjusting with Adams coming over. How many touchdowns can we expect from Puka? Right now, I'm not drafting Puka proactively. I'm willing to change my mind on anything. I'll listen to anybody with a good idea. Obviously, when it comes to receivers, I'm always going to cheat off your page because you do so much work on them. But is this more of a fluke, do you think, that they haven't gotten Puka going in the red zone? Or what do you make of him just being such an ineffective player inside the 10-yard line?
I think it has been a fluke, man. And I feel like that the more that now Cooper Kupp is gone, I think they're going to do so much more of the designer stuff to Puka, which they already started doing last year. And I think that like naturally at some point, he's just so good that he will have like a 10 touchdown season. I know there's like no, that's like stupid. There's no, okay, actually he's going to regress because of this many touches in the end zone, but whatever. Like, I just feel like he's too good to not have a double-digit touchdown season. But I don't want to totally derail the conversation here but I also think I'm going to be paying attention to just what reporters are saying from Rams camp, what Coach Speak Index is putting out there about some of these players and stuff like that. Because again, I don't want to totally derail the show here. But there's a little part of me that just wonders, Matthew Stafford, the numbers between like when he's pressured versus not pressured are very, very stark. We threw up the graphic earlier with the offensive line and the depth chart. Like Alaric Jackson currently's got the little health mark next to him because he's dealing with blood clots. Like if that offense, Coleman Shelton, who was not a good center at all for the Bears last year, like is he starting over Bo Limmer, who had his issues as a rookie? That could be an issue. We've already seen what happens to the Rams offense when the offensive line isn't good. Just go back to 2022, and Stafford is less mobile now than he was then, is more susceptible to pressure. So I'm really bullish on the Rams offense, but I'm also trying to, again, check some of my biases here towards just how cool I think the Adams and Puka thing is going to be, and just like look at ways that this might not work out for people involved here. And I do think that is something I'm going to be paying attention to.
It also, like every NFL team gets media scrutiny, but we're lucky with the Rams that Jordan Rodriguez, one of the beat writers for the Rams, just does an excellent job and seems to be really close to McVay. So I'm going to be reading all of her stuff this summer and trying to figure out how to get a step ahead on this team.
Yeah, because I want to draft the Rams, but I also want to make sure that's a good decision.
Always want to draft some McVay stuff, for sure.
Definitely want to be paying attention to that team throughout the course of training camp. All right, we're going to take another break here. When we come back, we have 4 more storylines to hit right after this. All right, we are back. We're continuing to run through training camp storylines, questions that we are monitoring here over the next few weeks and months. And God, it feels good to have some real things to pay attention to here, Scott, as the season is rapidly approaching. Give me your next storyline that you are paying attention to here as August approaches.
Yeah, excited to see what the Carolina Panthers are cooking in year 3 for Bryce Young. Season 1 was terrible. Last year started really rough, but got cooking second half of the year. And over the final third of the season, Bryce Young was actually the quarterback 6, but a lot of that was the 5 rushing touchdowns. I'm not sure how sticky that is year over year, but looks like Dave Canales was a right answer. Chuba Hubbard spread his wings last year. They draft McMillan as the alpha receiver this offense desperately needs. So it's an offense in general I'm interested in talking about, but obviously overwhelmed by Bryce Young. I want to know how much of his ascent last year was real, how much of it is repeatable, and can we look at him as a sleeper? And even if you don't like him, even if you're in a 1 quarterback league, you're not going to draft him. Can we play McMillan right out of the box? Are we going to draft Hubbard aggressively after his breakout season? They've added more competition for him at running back. Is Adam Thielen got anything left to give us? And Matt, anytime we can take an offense off the restricted list, because the Panthers were pretty much like it was Hubbard and nothing else. And it was just so nice that, patches of Thielen. Oh, yeah, hey, Bryce Young, having some fun with him. So to actually get this to be a bona fide offense, to be a team that we can feel good about drafting a handful of guys, it's just nice to have another team off the restricted list. And again, I know some of the bloom is off the Canales Rose because the Buccaneers were better after he left. Of course, Liam Coen has a big role in that, but I think Carolina hired the right guy. I think it took some time for the offense to maybe take shape, but it was just so nice to see Bryce Young get the type of coaching and the type of proactive play calling that he didn't get really at all as a rookie.
Yeah, I'm really high on Canales, and the fact that Liam Coen was better and the offense was better a year after Canales was there, that doesn't change too much of how I feel about Canales. Like, 2 guys can be good. Like they can both be good. And I think they are both good as offensive play callers. We'll see how Liam Coen is as a head coach, because I thought Canales acquitted himself well in what was a tough situation last year where they had to bench Bryce Young and basically only brought him back because Andy Dalton was in a car accident. Like, people forget about that, but ultimately Bryce Young came back a lot better. And there are a lot of pieces like Chuba Hubbard's a guy that I've ticked up my rankings a little bit, because I think his offensive line is really good. The run game was pretty diverse last year, and Hubbard just played so well. And Rico Dowdle, they barely paid him any money. Trevor Etienne was a 4th round pick for them. Obviously, Jonathan Brooks might go down as a what could have been type player because he tore his ACL again. Like, Hubbard might not have the insane workload that he had at times last year, but certainly is the lead dog of this offense and is somebody I want to draft a good bit of. My questions, Scott, for this team is the pass game. What do we get from are we going to get reports about Tetero McMillan's role? Because he's a guy that drafters right now are very, very in on. He's there's no cutesy rookie kind of discount for him. He's like a top 30 wide receiver across multiple formats here. And like, he better be the day one starting X receiver and a guy that impacts your team kind of right away if he's going to meet up with that. And I do I like McMillan. I think I've talked a lot about him being a really good fit with this team and kind of sliding everybody down into Xavier Legette can play more flanker, Jalen Coker, Adam Thielen in the slot, kind of big slot type players. Like, I think that works well. It works well in theory. It's a great team building thing, but just from a pure fantasy perspective, I think McMillan's got to hold a big role early, and he's got to hold it basically from week 1 to the end of the season to justify that ADP. So is that something you think can happen, and what are you kind of looking for there?
Yeah, I think it can happen, and I like that he's been comped to Drake London, who we're not going to talk Falcons today, but I hope everybody noticed that Drake London went ballistic, went just bonkers last year after the quarterback change. And I get excited when I see those double-digit target games, and London was getting like 12 target, 13 target, 15 target games. Yes, more of that, please. And who was Zach Robinson in the second year? I'll shoehorn the Falcons in here. Who was Zach Robinson in the second year of the play sheet? It took him a while to get comfortable last year. I like what the Falcons were selling and were cooking at the end of last season. So I'm going to draft a lot of Drake London. And who reminds me of Drake London? McMillan does. I think he's going to be good right away. I think he's going to catch 85 balls.
I feel like, Scott, you could make a pretty good NFC South only fantasy team this year. Like if you just draft,
that's a fun division. That is such a fun division, right?
It's a fun,
the Carnival episode,
which is crazy to say because, yeah, there were so many of them in there. It's crazy to say because usually it's like, well, some 9-18 will win division, whatever. But yeah, like, bro, it's a very fun division for fantasy specifically.
So what? It's 33-30 football, man. It is. It's like it's like the Big 12, man. It's awesome. It's pinball. It's I don't know if the Saints are invited to the party, but I'm in on the other three teams.
I think the Saints could be invited to the party from a fantasy perspective. Like if Tyler Shuck can play,
just gonna shuck it around all year. Okay,
dude, just shuck that thing around a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe we'll do that at some point. We'll go through.
You're ADP talking yourself into Chris Olave again, aren't you? You're doing it.
Of course I am. I never talked myself out of Chris Olave.
Right. Of course you didn't. Okay, gotcha. At least we're on record here. Producer Colin, get this on social in the next 10 minutes. Thank you.
I swear to God, I probably posted something a month ago, maybe a little bit more than that, where it's like pointing out that Chris Olave is like a top 15 wide receiver in like all the per route metrics, like first downs per route, yards per route, successful targets per route. And I was like, hey, this is not a fantasy post. He's just a good football player. And I swear to God, I've talked about him on every show as a decent fantasy bet. Every single show since then. I think producer Colin literally sent me a video of Chris Olave to post from yesterday's podcast. So we should not go down the Chris Olave road again, but I do think we got to look through the ADP and be like, can you build a good fantasy team from only NFC South players? I think it can be done.
Or could you build a good receiver room from only Ohio State receivers? Yeah, there's another documentary I want. I want Brian Hartline's like wide receiver room, right? I want to see and have everybody come back. Have Harrison come back. Have Olave come back. Have even Jamison Williams, who had to leave Ohio State because he wasn't going to play, so he went to Alabama, right? I mean, it's like getting into Harvard as your safety school, man. It doesn't make any sense. But yeah, I'm just glad we could shoehorn some Ohio State talk in here. But don't let us steer you away from burying the lead. I mean, the Carolina Panthers are going to be a fun fantasy offense.
Let's get the hell out of the NFC South here for a second before we start talking more Chris Olave. Let's go to the NFC West for my storyline here. I'm paying attention to Kenneth Walker versus Zach Charbonnet in Seattle because this is something has been on my radar basically since the Kubiak hire happened. And again, it feels like the entire fantasy industry reacted, hey, good, this is good news, like wheels up now for Kenneth Walker. It's a good system fit for him. And that is true. Like if you look at just fantasy points data, you look at the success rate and yards per carry on zone scheme runs, Charbonnet is at 2.58 yards per carry on zone runs. Kenneth Walker, 3.44. Now, obviously, that's not super high, but Zach Charbonnet, much better on gap runs, like 2.58 yards per carry on zone runs, 5.98 yards per carry on man gap runs. And this is going to be a zone run scheme. Kubiak coming over, that's what they do. That's the bread and butter. So this should, like, on paper, and whenever Walker has been available, he's always started over Charbonnet. But again, this is a new offensive staff, and we might just be taking, one metric and I think it's a good metric, and it's probably the right answer. Like the way I have it ranked is that, yeah, you should take Kenneth Walker at ADP. And I actually think I can see a scenario where there's a lot of upside with where he's going right now. But I just want to make sure we get through camp without it being like, nah, this is actually going to be a 50-50 or Zach Charbonnet is going to be like a mainstay here, because I think ADP wise, Charbonnet, like barely a top 35 running back, Kenneth Walker hanging around the top 15, 16 backs. It better be Ken Walker's job. So I want to just make sure we get through training camp with that being clear. How have you viewed this Seattle situation, Scott?
Yeah, I might be more pro Charbonnet than you are. A better receiver last year. His success
I want to be clear, by the way. I like Charbonnet. I think Charbonnet is a good back. So again, this is why I want to pay attention to this storyline, because I'm not totally sure how I feel about it.
Remember, it's Kenneth Walker's 4th season too, so that's an enormous year for any running back. Is he have a history here with Seattle? He inherits a new. The Grubb system only lasted 1 year, and it was only 11 months ago that Kubiak was the talk of the town as the Saints came out 2-0. They beat Carolina by 1 million points on week 1, and then they destroyed Dallas, I think it was, in week 2, and we all thought, oh, Kubiak, they're running play action, and look at all the fun things they're doing, and then it all went wrong. A lot of injuries involved there, but a lot of things that Kubiak has to be responsible for as well. I'm more, I think, willing to see Walker is just, I don't know, a half round overpriced. I think Charbonnet last year, the stuff that I care about, I thought the effectiveness was pretty close. I thought Charbonnet was a better receiver. So is this a 60-40? Is this 70-30? Is it, we'll see who beats out who. I mean, does Charbonnet have any path to be their primary back? You would think probably not. But I mean, the player I saw last year wasn't that much different than Walker. But Kenneth Walker, this is a critical year for him. This is a fork in the road. He's either going to be extended answer for Seattle. He's going to be on a new team next year. And can Charbonnet, for that matter, does he have the chops? Does he have the body type to handle a featured role? We still don't really have that answered as well. He's only had limited opportunities to start. So a lot of moving parts with Seattle. And also, what does their receiver room look like now that Metcalf and Lockett are gone? JSN spread his wings last year, but now it seems like he's always dealing with a new play caller, and now he has different running receivers to run with. And what does Cooper Kupp have left? He's somebody I haven't drafted, but again, if you were to say a good word about Cooper Kupp, I'd have to at least consider that before I went into my next draft. A lot of moving parts of the Seattle offense that was a competitive team. Of course, Sam Darnold, new quarterback. I mean, everything's new, right? I mean, Seattle, the joke is they never play a normal game, right? Every game they play, it just has some odd script to it, lands on a different number that you never see. They're like the human scoregami of the NFL. But there's always something fun in Seattle. I don't know where I land on all this stuff, but I do think I like Charbonnet more than the market does, and maybe Kenneth Walker less than the market does right now.
Yeah, there's so much new here, and that's why I think this is really important to pay attention to, because I kind of, again, right now I'm pretty cool with where Walker is going, but I'm open to you being more correct about this than the Kenneth Walker bros, because I think the Kenneth Walker bros might just be like, no, it's just training camp. What I do think those reports will be critical to pay attention to here as we're analyzing these two running backs, because I think Charbonnet is a good player. Like, I don't want to come off like I don't like Charbonnet, so he could be definitely a thorn, more than a thorn in the side of Kenneth Walker this fantasy season. Let's get to our last two storylines here, Scott. I can't believe you want to talk about this team, but alas, I'm going to let you go ahead and hit on it.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick one joker, and that's going to be the Cleveland Browns, because they have a quarterback room of wrong answers. Joe Flacco's too old. Kenny Pickett has been too inefficient. And who drafts two quarterbacks, right? I mean, they draft Dylan Gabriel, whom nobody really had a high grade on. And then the Shadur Sanders fall finally ended when somebody different than who drafted Gabriel decided to take Sanders. So these guys are all on a team that technically still has Deshaun Watson under contract as well. Congratulations, Cleveland. You have the most oddball collection of misfit toys in your quarterback room. It's the most important position in sports. Good luck, Kevin Stefanski. And can somebody here pump in life to Jerry Jeudy? Can they pump in life to David Njoku? We have questions in their backfield. Judkins is dealing with a legal situation now. What does Jerome Ford have left? Can Dylan Sampson become maybe a sleeper pick or somebody we wait on who eventually spreads his wings? They have been, look, Stefanski's gotten this team to the playoffs. Mayfield had a season a couple of years ago. Flacco had that run, that magical run. They've brought him back even at this advanced stage. I don't think they want him to play the full season. This looks like a team that's probably going to play 3 or 4 different quarterbacks during the season. So it could be, does that derail us from Jeudy? Does that derail us from David Njoku? Maybe it's just more of the oddball curiosity to the Browns, because I'm scared. I haven't been drafting Jeudy and I haven't been drafting Njoku, although a lot of fantasy analysts that I respect really like Njoku this year. I'm curious what your take is on that. But because there's skill talent I care about, we have to be cognizant of what's going on here. I'm just afraid that this is a team that's going to have a different quarterback for every month of the season.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there. Like, Charles McDonald and I are going to be on Football 301 later this week, breaking down this. We're not going to talk in depth about the damn Browns quarterback room, because my first response to the producers was, do we really need to have an in-depth breakdown on what's probably the 32nd ranked team this year? But I'm curious, like Charles's perspective on, can you even have, like, people are pitching this as it's a 4-man open quarterback competition. Can you even have 4 people competing for your quarterback position and it actually be a serious quarterback competition? My instinct there is no. Like, there's not enough reps to go around if you're prepping for one guy, which is probably daylight. Joe Flacco. Yeah, there's not forget enough daylight. Just like practice times are smaller now than they used to be. Like the backup usually doesn't get any reps with the first team, much less like, oh yeah, our 5th round pick is going to get first team reps. Probably not at all. So I think that the most likely answer is we get Joe Flacco starting at least early in the season. And it will be important to pay attention to those reps in camp, Scott, because I don't know, man, I'm with you that I don't like the Browns player I've drafted the most of is probably Cedric Tillman, because
Cedric Tillman, I knew this was coming.
People forget, dude, how close it was in terms of the production between the top 3 guys, Tillman, Judy, and Elijah Moore, but especially Tillman and Judy, it was very close. And then Tillman leaves, and then Judy goes off after the concussion for Tillman. And Judy, I still think he's the same player. He's very inconsistent, but he was used so well in that Browns offense last year. Like they got the best out of him and the routes that he's actually really successful running, these digs, these big overs and stuff like that. So like there's a part of me that wants to draft Jerry Jeudy just because I think he was so well used by this Brown staff. Like they got the best out of him, whereas previous staffs in Denver did not. But because I still view him as kind of an inconsistent player and Tillman is an interesting sleeper, if I'm trying to draft the Browns player, I'm going to do the one that's in the double-digit rounds. And if he doesn't work out, I just cut him and move on.
Yeah. Important to recognize just how good he was for like a 3 or 4 game sample last year. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And thanks for indulging me my Cleveland Browns moment.
Yeah, no problem. Not at all. It's amazing they double tapped 2 positions in the NFL draft. And that actually the fact that they might luck into the fact that the Dylan Sampson pick is going to look good because Quinshon Judkins quite literally hasn't signed a contract with this team. You've accused me of playing the hits twice already, Scott. I'm going to do that for my final storyline here. And I'm just going to say I'll be paying attention to Ricky Pearsall's health in training camp because he's on the PUP list right now, but people freaked out about that. He can quite literally be taken off at any time. And it needs to be happening soon. Like I don't want him on PUP for a week in training camp or anything like that. He needs to be out there. He needs to be participating because he's a guy that, number one, the 49ers are counting on. Like Juwan Jennings wants a new contract, justifiably so, because he played really well last year. I think Jennings is maybe not as good as some of his like crazy per route metrics, but he is a very, very solid wide receiver, and he should absolutely be paid more than $7.8 million. Really good contested catch player, rugged after the catch, good blocker, and a solid separator overall. So I think that you've got to like he's good, but he's unhappy with his contract. That's part of it. We don't know when Ayuk is going to play. Like they need Ricky Pearsall. Otherwise it's like Jacob Cowing or some of these random rookies they took this year. Like they need Pearsall to have, and he's ticketed for a big and like singular role. So that's a big part of it. And also like if he's out there where he goes and drafts right now is just such an appealing range to take a guy who I think is going to finish way higher than his, ADP in the 90s or something like that. So just how available he is going to be pretty critical to watch here, and just like his overall health during the course of training camp.
Yeah, the whole receiver room, right? I mean, how is Ayuk progressing? Is Jennings happy? I was really impressed with Jennings last year, and I think I'm probably more open to drafting him than the market is. So he's probably the player I'm going to be targeting. But Shanahan offense, Brock Purdy, a good player, I think. What's Kittle have left? Even who is the presumed backup to McCaffrey, right? Is it Garendo, or can Jordan James close that gap? Some of that stuff is going to be unknowable, but we know any San Francisco offense, any Kyle Shanahan offense deserves our eyeballs. Pearsall, the headliner here, but a lot to unpack as usual in San Francisco.
There's always something going on in San Francisco, man. It's like it's unbelievable that they've got another like wide receiver contract drama thing that they've got to deal with. It feels like the third or fourth year in a row that this has happened
every year.
Hopefully they can give Jennings a little bump and get him in camp and happy. Because I even as much as I like Pearsall, like where Juwan Jennings goes right now is totally fair. I want to draft him, and obviously like I don't know if Ayuk is going to be healthy at all this year, but that guy was one of the best receivers in football in 2023, and then they kind of all screwed themselves last year. So this is a good offense. I want to draft into this offense proactively, but of course, just have no idea like how the hell the ball is going to get distributed in the wide receiver room. So maybe the answer is just more George Kittle. I'm totally open to that. But yeah, this team is going to be super important to track in training camp, Scott. That is going to do it for us today. We asked a ton of questions and hopefully primed the listeners for what to watch over the next few weeks. What do you have working on that people can check out right now, Scott?
Yeah, we'll shuffle up series this week. My tiered rankings at the 4 major positions, and there's so much stuff to tackle, Matt. We did 12 teams today, or 12 situations. We didn't talk about JJ McCarthy. We didn't talk about year 2 of Jayden Daniels. We didn't talk about the Chiefs at all. I mean, every team's got something interesting to say. So if you want an idea of how I feel about basically the entire player pool, you're going to get it from my shuffle up series. And again, I can't say I can't get into specifics, but there's so much fun stuff coming with Yahoo Fantasy. Yes. You're going to be glad you're with us this year, and I just can't wait till we blow the roof off that, which is coming really soon.
Hell yeah. It's an awesome time to be dialed in here over at Yahoo Fantasy. I'm glad you mentioned JJ McCarthy because, I mean, definitely read Scott's thoughts about that because we didn't talk about him here today, which is a huge oversight by us. That's probably like, I actually wrote in my players to watch in training camp article. He's probably the most important player to watch
I put the Browns camp in here and not JJ McCarthy. That's, that's flag on the play, man. Flag on the play.
I wasted like 10 minutes of our lives talking about an all NFC South fantasy football team when we should have been like, well, what is there to say? Like, we got to make sure JJ McCarthy's good. Okay. Like we got to be watching that in training camp.
Kevin O'Connell's good, man. Burning building Kevin O'Connell, man. He's done it with Nick Mullins. He's done it with Hall. He's incredible. He's the, Caleb Williams was like, yeah, I want to play for that guy. I mean, even when he gave like the pep talk to Anthony Richardson, another team, we didn't talk about what's going on with the Colts and everything, but I just get all the fuzzies, man. I love what a great time for if Ben Johnson is the right answer. Look what the NFC South has. Dan Campbell, anybody would run through a wall for him. Matt LaFleur, maybe the most underrated coach. We didn't talk about them either. Is this the year that somebody post Devontae Adams gets over 100 targets? I guess Lazard got to 100 exactly, but is the shuttle system in Green Bay finally going to die out and somebody going to spread their wings there? Is Tucker Kraft an interesting tight end sleeper? Man, what a great time for NFC North football with the coaches, the offenses, and just a lot going on.
What a great time to be talking football with Scott Pianowski. What a great time to be dialed into Yahoo Fantasy. And on that note, as we come to a close here, reminder, subscribe to the new YouTube channel. August 4th, we officially move over all of our shows. We're going to be live at 5 p.m. Eastern starting that day as well. So review the podcast if you're just an audio listener. You are not going to get lost in the shuffle here at all. 5 stars only. If you don't like the show, you can just pretend this never happened. Keep moving and completely ignore us. That is going to do it for us today. On Tuesday, Yahoo's own Ray Garvin is going to join me to identify the 6 biggest dynasty debates, situations to pay attention to this draft season. Don't worry, your redraft bros, we're going to have plenty of this year topics as well. Until then, we are out.